let's talk about your chemoreceptors, the ones that influence breathing the most, okay? So your chemoreceptors, again, remember that chemoreceptors will send their information into your DRG, which then relays over to your VRG, which then sends information to your spinal cord, to your muscles. Okay, that's how you get breathing done through these chemoreceptors. So this part here, of course, is in the medulla oblongata, right, where you control your breathing from, your involuntary breathing. So your chemoreceptors are in two locations, okay? So you have, this is your heart here, okay, the heart. And this is your aorta coming out of the heart. And up here is your common carotid artery, okay? So you have, in the common carotid artery, you have chemoreceptors there, and you also have chemoreceptors here, basically in the aortic arch. So in the carotid sinus and in the, let's call your aortic bodies, that's where you have your peripheral chemoreceptors. Peripheral chemoreceptors, okay? And these receptors respond to CO2, extremely low levels of O2, usually are below 60% of perfusion, and most directly they respond to H+. This is really what drives them, H+ levels, okay? Basically, the pH is really what drives your receptors, both peripherally and centrally. So let's see how the peripheral chemoreceptors then get here. So pH or H+ indirectly reflects levels of CO2. Let's see how that is. So when CO2 enters the blood, CO2 will combine with water in the blood to make carbonic acid. Then that CO2, then the carbonic acid will dissociate, break apart into bicarbonate and H+. And this is what is detected in your blood by your peripheral chemoreceptors, okay? And once these peripheral chemoreceptors detect it, so here, the ones in the aorta will send the information in. Send it in through cranial nerve number 10. The ones here, will send theirs in through nerve 9. Okay? So nerve 10, vagus nerve, and nerve 9 will relay the information about what's going on with the chemoreceptors to, again, your DRG. DRG. That's how it gets it. And then DRG does that, there. Now, we also have central chemoreceptors. Okay, let's look at that one. The central chemoreceptors, meaning these are located in the brain, they're also in the medulla oblongata, not in here or here, but in another area of the medulla. This is where they are. So this is how it works. So this is your blood here, blood compartment. You're gonna have CSF. CSF surrounds the brain. So here's CSF compartment, and then here is the brain tissue. All right, let's make it the medulla oblongata tissue. Okay. So CO2 in the blood again. This CO2 it's a gas. I gotta make it clear, gases are always gases, no matter where they are. They can be gas in air or gas in water, it's still gas. So the CO2 in the blood is still gas. It will bubble into the CSF. And that CO2 will combine with water in the CSF to produce, again, your carbonic acid, which will then break apart into bicarbonate and H+. Then the H+ will diffuse into the medulla oblongata. And here is where it is then detected by central chemoreceptors. So once it's in the medulla, it's then detected by your central chemoreceptors, okay? And then these central chemoreceptors would then also relay it into the DRG. So from here, it gets relayed as well into the DRG. So both the peripheral and central chemoreceptors send information to the DRG, and then from there it goes to VRG, spinal cord, and muscles out. So that's how the central and the peripheral chemoreceptors relay info about basically carbon dioxide by changing pH or changing the levels of H+. Okay, what else to talk about here? So now there's something called your chemo. Well, this is, I kind of did it before, but let's do it again in a more clear way. So your chemoreceptor reflex is what happens in response to high levels of CO2, okay? So your chemoreceptor reflex triggered by increased levels of CO2 in the blood, so in the plasma. Okay. So here it is. So high levels of CO2 lead to changes in pH, a drop in pH. Okay. And that drop in pH is detected, so then it's detected again by your central chemoreceptors and your peripheral chemoreceptors. The central one will just go next door to the DRG. The peripheral ones will go through, travel through nerve 9 and 10. Nerve 9 and 10 carry it as well to the DRG. Okay. And then the DRG causes the VRG to tell the muscles of breathing to breathe faster, to increase your rate of respiration. And as you breathe faster, that will drop your levels of CO2. So your PCO2 levels will fall in the blood, and that will close the loop. So then it's a feedback to shut this off. All right, so when you're and this happens in what's called hyperventilation typically. So when you hyperventilate, meaning you're not breathing fast enough to match your metabolic needs for oxygen or to get rid of CO2, that will drive this process of CO2 goes high, pH drops, receptors tell VRG to tell VRG to breathe faster, and that way the levels of CO2 fall back down. When you hyperventilate, that's not really controlled here, because hyperventilation is really a thing done voluntarily. You can breathe fast. After a while, you stop it, because it's not being done naturally so. Well, it can be done, but it's typically done voluntarily. And when you hyperventilate, once you stop hyperventilating, this system will naturally slow down your breathing, because by basically dropping the CO2 levels too much, the pH will increase. And when pH increases, in fact, let's go the other way a little bit. So when you hyperventilate, meaning you overbreathe, even voluntarily, right? CO2 goes down, pH goes up, and this is what causes, this then causes what's called vasoconstriction of your arteries in the brain. Vasoconstriction, which is what leads to you faint, you pass out. Fainting because you have low blood flow, because the improper pH will cause the blood vessels to narrow down. There, okay? So you pass out. And while you pass out, you will stop over breathing, and then you can come back to normal. But typically, there isn't any reflex other than passing out to hyperventilation to get it back under control. Okay? Typically here, when you hyperventilate, will give you CO2, so you can breathe CO2 back from a bag, and that CO2 will come back in to bring it back to normal, bring the pH back to normal. Okay, so here you can breathe in bag of CO2. Because the air in the bag is the air you just pushed out, and that will bring the levels back to normal. Okay, and that's typically how they treat you when you're overbreathing. Give you a bag, breathe it back in to force you back on this track. Okay. Now some other comments about your over levels of CO2. So the normal levels of CO2. So CO2, PCO2 levels in the blood is normally between 37 to 43 millimeter of mercury. That's just normal CO2 levels. Okay, and if you are, say, above 43, then you are said to be what's called hypercapnia. Too much CO2. If you're less than 37, it's too low. So then you're in what's called hypocapnia, or you're hypercapnic and hypercapnic, referring to whether or not you're in the normal range for your partial pressure of CO2. Again, CO2 is always gas, no matter where it is. So we call it partial pressure of CO2. Okay, we'll pause there.